This is the most optimistic chapter of the entire Succession War so far. Hello and welcome back to Suck War Central. My name is CJ, and Christ on a stick, I am way too excited to do any kind of intro this week. Can we just hurry up and discuss the chapter already? I'm not the only one who's excited because Conjidal has been waiting for this since day one and is extremely eager to get going. I feel like except for the hating democracy stuff, this guy speaks for everyone reading Hunter x Hunter. He immediately kills two of Luzurus's guards, not by slitting their throats, but by stabbing them in the neck, which is a detail I heavily appreciate. As a nursing student, I've learned that while slitting a throat looks incredibly cinematic, it's actually far less effective than just stabbing the neck. Just go for the neck every time. So good on Conjidal for doing his homework. Really shows that he's not murdering people just because of his insecure masculinity, which compels him to, or maybe, I don't know, a lot of the other Ben men are probably insecure because, they're all gay or whatever, but Conjidal's not trying to look like a big, strong man. He's just doing it for the love of the game. I honestly really respect that. This is a man who is comfortable in his heterosexuality. What the fuck am I talking about? Anyway, I love the cute little tune he's singing to himself, too. Honestly, it's a little messed up, but I find this guy really endearing because he's just so excited to progress the plot, and me too, man. Me too. I've been enjoying the ride up till now, but shit hitting the fan is long overdue. Anyway, we cut back to Luzurus, and honestly, no, we don't, because this isn't actually Luzurus. Last chapter, people said I was crazy for thinking Halkenberg was firing an arrow at Luzurus, but this chapter has made me way more certain this is exactly what just happened. But I'm not going to celebrate too early, so I'm still going to refer to him as Luzurus for now, just, for clarity's sake. I don't want to jump the gun here. Luzurus knows about Benjamin's plan to enact martial law because, well, even an idiot could have figured that out. But the way he handles all this is quite eyebrow-raising to me. Telling his private guards not to resist and hand over weapons is interesting, but this is what gets to me. Somehow, he knows about Benjamin's order to leave the Hunter Association members unharmed, and that's interesting. The way he says it with such confidence, too. He says they're not supposed to. That's really interesting. Somehow, he knows this information for a fact. I don't see any possible way for Luzurus to know this, but Halkenberg absolutely would. Unma almost certainly has spies and private guards still in Benjamin's room and is thus feeding Halkenberg information because that's where the martial law announcement and all that went down to the soldiers. So, yeah, the way he has this whole plan prepared, I really feel like this was his intention. And yes, even though he didn't use the TSK-17 himself, Halkenberg did in fact know about the TSK-17 that would push Benjamin to act, because he coordinated this whole thing with First Queen Unma beforehand. Anyway, this panel has a few things that immediately tell me this isn't Luzurus. First of all, he orders his people to dispose of all the drugs. The real Luzurus would never abuse substances like that, he just loves them too much. And secondly, he wants to talk privately with Rice. It's just been established that Luzurus's guards will be useless, and only the 3 hunters he has with him will be able to actually protect him. And yet, the guard he chooses to speak to is this one guy who doesn't seem to have Nan's special skills or any other relevance of all people, yet still keeps on getting page time for some mysterious reason. Why? Maybe because, as I've been saying for several videos now, the death of Shikaku in front of room 1007 was a ploy by Halkenberg to gain control of one of Luzurus's guards, and Rice is that guard. I'm not going to rehash the whole theory right now, but Rice is 1000% a Halkenberg helper, and he almost certainly helped Balsamikenberg correctly target the arrow at Luzurus last chapter. Side note, Togashi drew this picture to announce dialogue completion for chapter 420, and I'm sorry, but no way is Luzurus that locked in. This is Halkenberg in his body in this doodle. Also, I think it's really funny that Basho is so dead set on finding reasons not to destroy the drugs. Bro's a pothead to his core. Anyway, meanwhile, this guy Ridge, who I have known this whole time as the dude who rap battled Basho during the second banquet, stumbles upon Conjidal at the crime scene, and holy crap, looks like we have an end fight on our hands. I have to say, as much as I love the guy, I don't like Conjidal's chances here. When it comes to hunters versus Ben men, 9 times out of 10, you bet on the hunter. They seem to have superior Nen knowledge, combat skills, abilities, etc. And as a reminder, there's two more pro hunters Conjadal has to deal with even if he beats Ridge. Aside from Basho, Luzerus has employed Scart, although Scart has never actually appeared except in this little portrait, and on top of that, Luzerus has a guardian spirit beast. Conjadal is either incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, or is packing some serious Nen based heat if he thinks he has that entire dog in him. Meanwhile, we're introduced to this guy, Chiamashi. And really, when I said Sakwere was the last of Benjamin's soldiers whose names we didn't know, that was my mistake because I got this dude confused with Butch. He looks pretty similar. But this guy was the real last guard, and we see him teaming up with Yushohi outside Halkenberg's room, and we even learn his Nen ability. But before we get into that, Yushohi has some interesting stuff to say. He talks about how his N makes him practically defenseless and overloads him with information, and once again, I think this is proof that the Benmen are just a lower caliber of Nen user than the sort we're used to in this series. Nobody else who has ever used N has described it as this strenuous or difficult to use sort of thing. I mean, it's downright debilitating for him. He goes on to talk about how his ability is useless at this point because it was designed for the stand around and do nothing phase of the Succession War, and it did admittedly get Sale Sale. So we learn about Shiamashi's ability. He's a manipulator, and apparently he can make people. It has the consistency of an enhancer, this manipulator. Anyway, when we learn the conditions, it actually makes a fair amount of sense. The volunteer gets a ridiculous enforced Zetsu penalty, 100 times the length of the invincibility. For some perspective, that means if he were to use this ability for 2 minutes, Yushohi would then be put into Zetsu for over 3 hours. And given how crazy things are going to get in martial law, I mean, basically, whenever this ability ends, Yushohi is going to be useless for the rest of the main event. But it gets worse. After the ability ends, 1/3 of the damage the volunteer would have taken hits them all at once. Okay, that seems unnecessarily harsh, especially when you consider the fact that the ability needs to be charged up by Chiamashi charging up the partner for the same amount of time they want to be for. Presumably, there's an upper limit enforced by Chiamashi's aura capacity, or he would have just made Benjamin unkillable before he confronted Camilla or Terra Sandwich or something, or at least started charging up Yushohi more than like 3 minutes before martial law. Like, it's one of those abilities that would be decent with a semi-competent user, but because it's coming from one of the Ben Men, it just sucks ass because those guys suck ass. They're all weaklings. I mean, Yushohi can't even use N without getting overstimulated. Also, symbiotic attacks from multiple Nen users working together can't be blocked. Yeah, this dude is Halken fodder. It really seems to me like a case of a manipulator who wishes they were an enhancer but would have just been better off making a traditional manipulation ability. And honestly, I think that's very fitting for the types of people Benjamin is going to have in his private army. Also, to add to how weak the Ben men are, Yushohi's N detected one person in that room, but seems to be unable to even make out the details? That's really weak. I mean, Nobunaga was all, my N could detect even a falling leaf, or blades of grass, or whatever the fuck he said. Anyway, crackpot theory time. I bet that one person still in the room is Balsamico, restrained or sedated somehow. Or I don't know, maybe they slashed his Achilles tendons or something crazy like that. And he has a bomb strapped to him that's gonna go off and immediately make Yushohi go, well, I'm fucked the minute this ability ends, so let's make the most of the night, because we're gonna die young. So we go back over to room 1014, we get some nice characterization for Shimanu. She seems to agree with me that unless it's really ugly, all babies do indeed look the same. Meanwhile, the gang discusses what exactly to do about the curses, and I feel seen. This conversation right here, what if it's this? Unless it's this? Well, actually, we don't know and have to account for this. All this is what it feels like to make Hunter x Hunter theories when there are so many goddamn unknowns in such a complicated arc. And yeah, what they eventually land on is maybe the baby's on the boat, but probably not. But either way, the curses are probably a threat to this baby, to Wobble, or both, and the upper princes will remain incredibly suspicious of us, and furthermore, we have no goddamn idea how to approach these curses and need to commit to something ASAP, so our plan has to be to try and use Longhee's ability to strike a deal with Beyond. Yes, we're gonna go through the whole conversation, but I feel like establishing the endpoint will make it all easier to follow, you know? because these few pages just melted my goddamn brain the first time. Anyway, look, we're finally addressing the elephant in the room, the mysterious malicious aura pulse that Kurapika felt from Woble's crib on day one. We are addressing it to say, I don't know, man. If I had to guess, it is, as Kurapika speculates, silent majority being activated and targeted on one of the guards near the crib. But, he could also be right when he says it might be a curse being placed on the baby. I don't know. None of the explanations really sit right with me, like, at all, and there's too much other stuff in this chapter that we have to discuss ASAP. Kurapika raises and then immediately dismisses the terrible idea of stealing the curse ability from Beyond, and Bill says that Beyond would actually accept a pardon from the Hunter Association as a bargaining chip. Bill discusses the possibility of using Longhe's ability for this, and that's gonna be tough. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't actually know what the end goal of the contract Kurapika made with Longhe is. In other words, what Kurapika has to do to get that reward. But it's gotta be either Tabeppa becoming king or killing Beyond's royal child, and both of those seem incredibly difficult and dangerous. Anyway, moving on, I really adore this next scene with Bill. It's not that surprising that Bill is turning against Beyond after learning what a messed up guy he is, but it's also very surprising. It also warmed my heart a bit. What I found more interesting, though, is that Kurapika didn't even consider that Bill might change sides. Like, Kurapika looks genuinely astonished that Bill is making the right moral choice here, and that's extremely sad. It shows that Kurapika is so resolute and committed to his goals that he's getting tunnel vision and losing all perspective. I honestly think this might be my single favorite scene of the arc so far. Kurapika has spent the last year tracking down and torturing flesh collectors to retrieve the scarlet eyes of his people, and that's before he was thrown into a death game that showcases the sickening depths of human depravity in all their glory. He's seen the very worst of humanity, to the point that he's completely shocked by anybody just being a good person. Also, Bill saying he would never hang out with Kurapika outside of work, well, that just breaks my heart. Because honestly, the more we see of him, the more Bill feels to me like a bit of a calmer and more mature version of someone like Leorio. But he really has a lot in common with both Gon and Leorio, and I think that's intentional. I believe what Togashi is saying here is that Bill is someone Kurapika could have been friends with if they'd met at the start of his journey. But now, Kurapika has fallen so far that he's unrecognizable compared to who he once was. He's not a villain, but he honestly kind of is approaching villainy and sliding into the darkness. Meanwhile, Bill says, fuck it, we ball. He's planning to end the entire succession war and really taking the initiative, and oh my god, I love this guy's character arc so much. If Bill dies, I'm going to be legitimately so upset. Like, it's going to be a struggle to get the video out that week. You guys might not hear from me for like a week and a half. I will be devastated if Bill dies. He better not fucking die. Um, anyway, yeah. Bill is planning to get the entire association involved, and like, I think this is a really good play. It also sort of recontextualizes the presence of Botabai and Mizaistam in chapter 410. What if they're there because the first thing Kurapika did after this conversation was call his fellow Zodiacs and try to organize the Hunter Association around the Solving the Curses plan? And holy hell, Bill actually has a pretty good idea about how to navigate the politics involved in all this and make the plan work. I especially like the framing of saving the princes from a curse being used as the cover story for ending the succession war. Because yes, there are literal curses involved, but the succession war itself is also a metaphorical curse on the Huiguo Ro bloodline. I also think it's quite fascinating how Bill seems to know a lot about Beyond and his personality. It suggests to me that Beyond sought out and recruited a good chunk of his upper echelons personally, and Bill was genuinely captivated by his whole persona and mission. That has to make this betrayal hurt even more. I mean, he's just found out that his idol, the man he was going to follow into the great unknown, who he trusted to lead humanity into the next era, is a total scumbag. Honestly, this makes me love Bill so much more than I already did, and it might just be recency bias talking, but Bill is quickly climbing my list of favorite characters in this arc. I also think it's interesting how much Beyond seems to have in common with his father. They're both childlike at heart and enjoy struggles against others, but while Isaac preferred bloodshed, combat, martial arts, Beyond's language is one of schemes and trickery. Makes me wonder if, in the same way Meruem was Isaac's destined worthy opponent, Kurapika might end up as Beyond's. And honestly, that doesn't bode so well for Kurapika. Because Meruem won, but at what cost? Anyway, they go on to talk about how Woble's probably not on the boat, but the military will never be convinced of that because it's almost impossible to prove. Honestly, this feels like an Umaneko logic battle to me, and I dig it. Proving a negative is substantially harder than proving a positive, and as long as you haven't checked every corner of the boat, Wobble could be on it somewhere. It's known as the devil's proof. But this is actually a good thing, because it means Wobble is less likely to be targeted while the troublesome princes remain, since it'd be better to take care of those more urgent, time sensitive threats. And this is a hilarious conversation to be having 3 minutes before Benjamin enacts martial law because he has 9 hours to live. I mean, come on, talk about aging poorly. Also, in this panel where Kurapika discusses how to address the curses, holy shit, Togashi stole the light behind his eyes. He got hit with the Illumi beam. Put them back, Togashi, please. Okay, that's better. So, moving on, Kurapika talks about how they need to find an exorcist in case Wobble is a target of Beyond's curses. And when I read this chapter with my partner, it occurred to him that this might end up being Leorio. After all, per Jing's theorizing, Leorio has probably developed the Nen he has to aid his medical practice and treat patients, so an exorcism ability actually makes perfect sense to him. Plus, Leorio is quite talented. Nobody ever taught him to use Nen properly. He was way behind the others in learning it, and he still managed to develop a full-fledged Hatsu and impress Jing by the time of the election arc. I wouldn't be surprised if he has more than one Nen ability, and exorcism seems right up his alley. And then we get some more interesting Kurapika and Oito characterization, and I really love how they're foiling each other. Oito knows that layering secrets upon secrets is the only way she could possibly stand a chance at all this and fend off the assassins coming for her child. And Kurapika is one of the only people smart enough, yet humble enough to see past her ruses. It's a very simple dynamic, and maybe I'm hallucinating a bit, but it almost feels touchingly romantic to me the way he's the only one who can really understand Oito and how she thinks. I also see it in the way Kurapika and Oito look at each other on page 18 of the chapter, but we're getting into the weeds. Anyway, it makes me wonder just how many more secrets the 8th Queen has. What if she even knows the identity of Silent Majority's user? What if she is the user? No, no, no. We're not doing another Silent Majority theory right now, especially when I think it's probably Long Key, but still not necessarily. So Oito's got a secret way to contact her sister back on the mainland and communicate about Wobble. And yeah, I can't wait any longer. This is what we've been waiting for. Holy shit, Gon and Killua jump scare. Blah, blah, blah. Post office in Yamato. I don't give a flying fuck. The boys are back in town, and as usual, Gon is dressed like a hobo, and Killua is dripped the fuck out. I have to say, I truly did not see this coming. Gon, I thought, may someday return to the story because of the gyro thing, but Killua and Aluka, that is a huge surprise. Wait, does this mean Gyro is gonna get involved somehow? There's no way, right? Okay, yeah, we have like zero reason to suspect that right now, so I'm just not gonna touch that idea until I don't know, we have some kind of actual reason to suspect it beyond we expect Gon and Gyro to meet, Gon is back, therefore Gyro, yada yada. I do have to say though, it feels so surreal to see these kids after the drastic art style shift of the Succession War. They look totally different from like every other character. But goddamn, it really seems like they're going off to locate the real Prince Wobble on the mainland and just wow. I miss these two idiots. I miss them so much, and I didn't even realize how much I missed them until I saw them on this page. Also, this is the first time in a while we've seen the main quartet on the same manga page. Yes, Leorio's here too. You just have to have a good eye. Anyway, so it's nice to see them, but I don't expect them to do anything super drastic like a lot of people are saying. They're not going to go to the Black Whale. Killua's not going to use Nanaka to do any crazy shit. Gon's not about to get his Nen back. Well, okay, that one might age poorly, but still. I think they're going to have a minor role, a few chapters at most, here and there, sprinkled in, while the camera mostly focuses on, the boat. I mean, this isn't their arc. Killua helped Kurapika meet Bisky, but he didn't go on the boat himself. He's not about to get that involved. And besides, Killua is strongly against using Nanaka's powers recklessly unless he's genuinely backed into a corner. This makes sense for like 100 different reasons, and honestly, I am quite tired of people saying Killua should just use Nanaka to do XYZ. If you're gonna say that to me, please don't, because I'm not gonna argue with someone who apparently last read the election arc 10 years ago with their eyes closed. I think locating and rescuing Wobble is a pretty reasonable task. Of course, there's always the chance it gets more complicated because Benjamin probably has some loyalists on the mainland who will try to find and kill Wobble if they get wind of all this, but like, let's be real. Killua was boxing with Yuppie just a couple arcs ago. He could eviscerate the entire Kakanese army with one hand. And in an absolute emergency, if there was no other option, I mean, yeah, he would probably use Nanaka's powers, but I seriously doubt there's a chance of it coming to that. Anyway, never in a million years did I expect these kids to get involved in this arc. But thinking about it, it actually kind of makes perfect sense. For starters, Killua has been involved since the start as the person who put Bisky and Kurapika in touch. Also, we have technically seen Gon in this arc all the way back in chapter 344, reflecting on his new life and lack of Nen. And thematically, it's a touch of genius. I feel that Bill's monologue in this chapter was a sort of wake up call to Kurapika that he's losing himself. Again, that visceral shock Kurapika expresses at Bill's face turn, I feel that was also a moment where Kurapika just had to reflect on himself and think about what kind of person he's becoming and what kind of person he wants to be. It was a slap to the face that sent him emotionally reeling, and when he got to his feet, he made the choice to lean on his friends for support. The friends that have been there for him since the day they met. This, I think, is him trying to make the right choice, to be a good person, to avoid being completely consumed by his goal. It's the first chapter in a very long time that has made me think Kurapika might not be doomed. And oh man, this didn't make me cry quite yet, but it was a close one. Whatever information Kurapika sends them, though, he better include an apology. Because even though they all worked together to pass the Hunter exam, even though they were there for him and York knew, even though they risked their lives again and again to help him beat the Phantom Troop and to save him from himself, when Gon was on death's door, when Killua was fighting with all his might against his family, when Leorio was giving everything to winning over the Hunter Association and using its resources to save Gon, Kurapika wasn't there for them. And despite all that, when Kurapika needed help, Killua still came through for him and put him in touch with Bisky. So look, this is Yoshihiro Togashi we're talking about. This guy always gets your hopes up right before ripping your heart out. I want to say that this is the end of Kurapika's corruption arc and the start of his redemption arc. I want to say that when the chips are down, when his goals pull him in one direction and his connections pull him in the other, he's going to make the right choice. But I just can't bring myself to be that hopeful. For the last of the Kurta clan, who feels all he has left is his goal, who believes he has nothing to return to, who fears the day his rage fades instead of welcoming it, we might be long past the time for that.